If you guys haven't heard, Microsoft is considering launching Indiana Jones on the PlayStation 5. Now, this is an article from The Verge. It says Indiana Jones and the Great Circle could arrive on PS5 months after the Xbox launch. It says Bethesda's upcoming Indiana Jones game is also tentatively set to launch on Sony's PlayStation 5 console. We got our first glimpse of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle during Microsoft's Xbox Developer Direct event last month, where it was announced for Xbox and PC. A source familiar with Microsoft's plans tells The Verge that Bethesda is also considering bringing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle to PS5. Why is this a big deal? The big deal here is that Indiana Jones was supposed to be an Xbox exclusive game. Next-gen consoles are not cheap, bro. They're like $500. It is not an insignificant amount of money to tell gamers, hey, buy this Xbox because you want to play these specific games, and then all of a sudden put them on PlayStation 5. That is a serious investment for a lot of people. Now, The Verge says a new multi-platform approach for certain Xbox games is emerging inside Microsoft, with the company weighing which titles will remain exclusive and others that will appear on Switch or PlayStation 5 in the future. And when you consider that it's not just the PlayStation, their direct competitor, it's also the Nintendo Switch that might end up getting some of these games. When you think about that, it really puts into perspective how useless buying the Xbox console really is. And like, the Nintendo Switch is not even up to par in terms of hardware with the PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox. It's not even close. So whatever game that they decide to port over there is going to have to be like ridiculously easy for this game to play, for it to actually work on Switch. I'll be honest, like, dude, my daughter has a Switch, and a lot of Switch games don't even work on the Switch. Like, how are we going to play Xbox games from the next-gen console on a Switch? It doesn't make sense. What are we going to play them at 24 FPS? But I'm not really a console fanboy. I'm a PC fanboy, and I have been for a really long time. So for me, I own a PlayStation 5. But like, that being said, I don't have any vested interest in whether or not the games from the Xbox make it to the PlayStation at all. Not that I wouldn't mind playing Halo. I have a Halo tattoo. Halo was my first-person shooter that I fell in love with, and I love the game and all, but I'm not going to buy an Xbox just to play it. You can also just buy an Xbox Game Pass subscription if you want to play it on your PC. So what incentive is there to really buy the Xbox console at this point? I feel like there really isn't one. And so to go on with the article, it says, while Bethesda will launch its Indiana Jones game first as an Xbox console exclusive, it's currently set to have a rather short period of exclusivity, we're told. Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush have both reportedly been under cross-platform consideration, and we understand Microsoft has also looked into bringing other Xbox games to rival consoles. And my question is, if you're bringing Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush to the PlayStation 5 or the Nintendo Switch, how are you ever going to sell Xboxes again after that? And I know that they've been losing the console war, and if you guys don't know about this, this is an article from Game Rant, published December 21st, 2023, and it states that the PS5 is outselling the Xbox Series X and S by nearly a 3-to-1 margin, with the PS5 selling 22.5 million units compared to the Xbox's 7.6 million units over the last year. Major exclusives, including Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation, Final Fantasy 16, Baldur's Gate 3, have contributed to the PS5's success. And when you look at that, it really puts into perspective just how far behind in the console race Xbox is compared to PlayStation. The Xbox never really had the exclusives to carry the weight to be able to make it a competitor to the PS5, especially when you factor in Final Fantasy, which is one of the biggest series of all time. Nintendo is kind of a different market. It's kind of geared towards a younger audience, so it makes it really difficult to consider them in the same console war. And also, the Switch is insanely popular. Let's go ahead and look that up real quick. I just wanna bring this to your guys' attention. In terms of hardware, the Switch sold 340 million units compared to 22.5 million units of the PlayStation. The Switch is in its own console war. The Switch is in a war all of its own at this point. And also, like, the Switch games themselves are insanely popular with their very targeted market. But at the same time, most of the games that are on Switch are not on any other console, and most of the games that are on PlayStation and Xbox can't make it to Switch because the hardware just isn't powerful enough to run them. So the Switch is kind of in a league of its own, but we might see Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush make its way over there. The Xbox never had the weight to be able to really compete in this race to begin with. And then they went ahead and put Game Pass on PC, and while that is good for Game Pass numbers, it's actually terrible for selling Xboxes themselves. And I think they might just be throwing in the towel here and saying, look, we lost. You know, we get it. We lost. And it's in Microsoft's best interest to put their games on other platforms. But then you consider it, right? Like, is it in Sony's best interest to put Xbox games on PlayStation? Is it in Sony's best interest to put Xbox games on PlayStation? I think is a really hard question to ask, because they could flat out demolish their competitor by not allowing those games to come to their platform. But at the same time, they would alienate their consumer by not allowing those games on their platform. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. You think about it from a business perspective, it makes way more sense for Microsoft, who is losing the console war, to put their games wherever they can so that they can sell enough games to remain viable as a company, even though Microsoft has bought a lot of the studios that make games like for next-gen consoles and make games for PC to the point where they almost have a monopoly of gaming. But at the same time, they're losing the console wars so hard, so it makes sense for them to put their games on other platforms, but then Sony has to weigh the consequences of that. Like, if they allow Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush and Halo to be ported over to the PlayStation 5, what really does that benefit them aside from looking good to their consumer? But then when you think about Microsoft Game Pass, is Game Pass on its way over to the PlayStation 5? And if it is, are we going to be sitting there in a year from now or 2 years from now, never buying an Xbox console again, to the point where they just don't even make them anymore, and Game Pass is for PC and for PlayStation 5? Is this move going to make the Xbox obsolete? And the possibility is yes, and like, we've never been in a situation like this before. We have one more thing to talk about here, because Phil Spencer actually came out and made a tweet about this. So this is an article from Kotaku, and it says, the full tweet from Phil Spencer is as follows, quote, "We're listening and we hear you." And if that ain't the most hilarious thing, because this is like the thing that companies tell gamers when they're not going to do what gamers want them to do. And like, there are so many companies that use these words and then don't do something that makes gamers happy right after that. It's been years that they've been doing this, and we all just fall for it every time. Listen, I don't think that anyone is going to be happy with what comes out of this Xbox business update event. Specifically, Xbox gamers who have purchased the hardware are probably going to be pretty pissed. The rest of us might be fine. The rest of us who just play on PC, or we have a PlayStation and we play on PC, or we have a Game Pass subscription, but we didn't buy the Xbox console. I feel like the rest of us are going to be fine. But when you hear the words, "We're listening and we hear you," you can expect some shit is about to hit the fan, dude. It's foreboding words, man. It doesn't look good for Xbox, and although it benefits the consumer so that we don't have to buy another console to play the games that we want to play, it is sad to see them lose the console race so hard that they potentially never make another piece of hardware again.